There comes a moment when you stop explaining, you stop defending, you stop asking to be understood, not because you lost your voice, but because you finally found your strength. And in that moment, when you choose silence over noise, distance over chaos, and peace over proof, the silence doesn't whisper, it roars. Silence is often mistaken for weakness. People think if you're quiet, you've given up. They think if you walk away without a speech, without a fight, without a final word, you've lost. But the truth is, silence becomes powerful only when it's earned. When you've said everything that needed to be said, when you've tried every way to be understood, and when you realize that repeating yourself is no longer communication, it's self-betrayal. Silence does not arrive at the beginning of the journey. It shows up at the end. It comes after you have spoken clearly, explained patiently, and tried honestly. It comes after you have raised your voice, lowered your tone, adjusted your words, and still found yourself unheard. So when silence finally appears, it is not because you had nothing left to say. It is because you finally said enough. Completion looks quiet because there is no longer a need to convince, persuade, or plead. Defeat is loud and desperate. Completion is calm and settled. People confuse silence with weakness because they measure strength by noise. They believe power shows up as arguments, long speeches, and dramatic exits. But true strength is knowing when further words would only cheapen your dignity. Silence is what happens when you realize that continuing to speak would mean abandoning yourself, respect just to feel momentarily understood. At that point, you choose yourself. That choice doesn't need applause or explanation. It simply needs resolve. Completion means you have processed the lesson. You are no longer trying to win an argument because you have already won clarity. You understand what the situation is, who the people are, and what they are capable or incapable of giving. Silence is the sound of acceptance, not surrender. It is the moment you stop asking someone to be something they have shown you they cannot be. And there is nothing weak about finally seeing the truth. There is a difference between giving up and being done. Giving up is rooted in exhaustion without understanding. Being done is rooted in awareness. When you're done, you are no longer emotionally reactive. You are no longer pulled into cycles of explanation and disappointment. You are no longer fighting for fairness from people who thrive on imbalance. Silence becomes the boundary that says, this ends here, without hostility, without resentment, and without regret. Completion also means you stop carrying conversations that were never meant to be mutual. You recognize that some people don't listen to understand, they listen to respond, to defend, or to control. Silence removes you from that exchange. It reclaims your time and energy. And once you experience how peaceful life feels without constant justification, you realize how heavy those conversations truly were. Silence becomes less of a response and more of a release. This kind of silence is intentional. It is chosen, not forced. It is steady, not impulsive. It doesn't come from fear of confrontation, but from mastery over it. You are no longer afraid of being misunderstood because you understand yourself. You no longer chase clarity from others because you already have it within. Silence becomes the final sentence in a chapter you have outgrown, written not in anger, but in wisdom. Arguments feel powerful in the moment. Voices rise, points are made, emotions are poured out with the hope that if you say it just right, something will finally click. But most arguments are not about truth. They are about control, pride, and who gets the last word. Absence, on the other hand, does not compete. It doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't explain itself. It simply removes access. And that removal creates an echo that no argument ever could. When you are present, people can dismiss your words, twist your intentions or minimize your pain. They can interrupt, deflect, and redirect the conversation until the original point is lost. Your presence gives them something to push against. But when you step away, there is nothing left to argue with, no reactions to provoke, no emotions to manipulate. Absence leaves behind unanswered questions, and those questions are far more unsettling than any debate. Absence forces reflection. When you are no longer there to absorb disrespect, people are left alone with their behavior. They replay moments in their mind, not because you reminded them, but because your silence did. They notice the shift, the missing messages, the empty space where your effort used to be. And in that quiet, the truth becomes harder to ignore. Arguments invite resistance. Absence invites realization. There is power in no longer showing up where you are not valued. Every time you stayed and argued, you were investing energy into a place that had already shown you its limits. Absence is the moment you stop investing in a losing conversation. It says, without cruelty or drama, I will not keep explaining my worth to someone who benefits from not seeing it. That message lands deeper than any carefully constructed sentence ever could. Absence also rebalances power. When you argue, you are still engaged, you are still reachable, you are still emotionally available. But when you remove yourself, the dynamic changes. The person who once felt comfortable dismissing you now feels the weight of losing access to you, not because you threatened them, but because you chose yourself. And that choice shifts the entire equation. Most importantly, absence protects your peace. Arguments keep wounds open. They keep you revisiting the same hurt, hoping for a different response. Absence allows healing to begin. It creates space between you and the source of conflict. In that space, clarity grows. You start to see how much energy you were spending just to be heard. And you realize that walking away didn't make you weak. It finally made you free. Peace is often mistaken for comfort, but real peace is anything but easy. Choosing peace means choosing the harder road in the short term so you don't suffer in the long run. It means resisting the urge to react when emotions are high, resisting the temptation to prove your point, and resisting the satisfaction that comes from being right. Peace demands courage because it asks you to walk away from battles your ego wants to fight, but your soul is tired of surviving. It takes courage to stay calm when chaos is familiar. Many people are conditioned to believe that intensity equals importance, that loud emotions mean deep connections. So when you choose peace, you are choosing unfamiliar territory. You are choosing restraint in a world that celebrates reaction. That restraint is not fear. It is discipline. It is knowing that not every challenge requires your participation, and not every insult deserves a response. Peace also requires the courage to disappoint others. When you stop engaging in drama, people who benefited from your reactions may accuse you of changing, becoming distant, or being cold. They are not mourning the loss of you. They are mourning the loss of control over you. Standing firm in your peace means accepting that not everyone will understand your boundaries and being okay with that. Courage is standing in your truth, even when it costs you approval. Choosing peace means confronting your own habits as well. It means recognizing how often you return to the same conflict, hoping for a different outcome. It means admitting that some situations survived only because you kept feeding them your energy. Letting go requires honesty with yourself, and honesty takes bravery. You have to face the uncomfortable truth that peace begins the moment you stop participating in what drains you. Peace demands patience. It doesn't deliver instant validation or dramatic closure. Instead, it offers quiet nights, steady mornings, and a mind no longer racing with unresolved conversations. Courage is trusting that this quiet is not emptiness, but healing in progress. It is believing that you don't need noise to feel alive, and that calm can be just as powerful as intensity. In the end, peace is not passive, it is intentional. It is a decision made daily, sometimes moment by moment. It is choosing growth over gratification, long-term stability over short-term satisfaction. And every time you choose peace, you prove that your strength is no longer measured by how loudly you fight, but by how wisely you walk away. Silence has a way of shifting responsibility back to where it belongs. When you speak constantly, explain repeatedly, or defend yourself endlessly, you unknowingly carry the emotional labor of the entire situation. You become the one holding the conversation together, the one trying to make sense of confusion that you didn't create. But when you choose silence, that burden drops. And suddenly, the other person has nothing to hide behind. Without your reactions, excuses lose their power. There is no argument to distract from the truth, no emotional response to redirect blame. Silence removes the smoke screen. It doesn't accuse, threaten, or demand. It simply steps back. And in that space, people are left face to face with their actions, their words, and the consequences they tried to avoid. Accountability becomes unavoidable when there is no one else doing the emotional work for them. Silence also exposes patterns. When you stop responding, you begin to see who reaches out with sincerity and who reaches out only to regain control. Some will reflect and take responsibility. Others will grow louder, angrier, or more manipulative, revealing exactly who they are when they can no longer provoke you. Silence doesn't create behavior, it reveals it. And what it reveals often provides the clarity words never could. For accountability to exist, there must be space for reflection. Constant dialogue prevents that. Silence creates it. In the quiet, people replay conversations in their minds. They remember moments they dismissed. They feel the absence of the energy you once provided. And whether they admit it or not, that absence becomes a mirror. It shows them the impact of their behavior without you pointing it out. Choosing silence is also a form of self-accountability. It forces you to examine why you tolerated what you did for so long. It asks you to acknowledge your role, not in their behavior, but in how long you stayed. Silence is the moment you stop explaining your pain to others and start honoring it yourself. That internal honesty is where real growth begins. Ultimately, silence says, I will not participate in my own disrespect. It places responsibility back into the hands of those who must carry it. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with clarity. And that clarity is powerful because it cannot be argued with, denied, or ignored forever. Real growth rarely announces itself. It doesn't arrive with speeches, declarations, or dramatic transformations meant for public approval. Growth happens privately in the moments when no one is watching, when you choose restraint over reaction, reflection over retaliation, and understanding over ego. While noise demands attention, growth prefers solitude. It works silently, reshaping your mindset long before the world notices a change in your behavior. When you are growing, you stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You realize that clarity does not always come from more words, but from better boundaries. Growth teaches you that not every thought needs to be spoken, and not every feeling needs an audience. Silence becomes a sign of maturity because you no longer need validation to confirm your progress. You can feel the difference within yourself. Growth also changes what you tolerate. Situations that once felt normal begin to feel heavy. Conversations that once seemed necessary start to feel draining. This shift doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't require confrontation. It shows up as distance, as pause, as a subtle but firm decision to no longer participate in what no longer aligns with who you are becoming. Growth is quiet because it is certain. As you grow, you learn the value of patience. You understand that immediate reactions often satisfy the ego, but delay healing. Silence allows lessons to settle. It gives you time to process emotions instead of being controlled by them. In that stillness, wisdom forms. You begin to respond instead of react, and sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. Growth also refines your sense of self-respect. You stop chasing people, outcomes, and explanations that cost you your peace. You become selective with your energy, your time, and your attention. That selectivity is not arrogance. It is awareness. You know that your growth depends on where you invest yourself, and silence helps you protect that investment. In its quietest form, growth looks like consistency. It looks like showing up for yourself even when no one else applauds. It looks like walking away without resentment and moving forward without bitterness. Growth doesn't need to be loud to be real. Its strength lies in how deeply it transforms you long before it ever changes what others see. Being done is not an emotional outburst. It is an internal decision. It is the moment you stop negotiating your worth for comfort, familiarity, or hope that someone will eventually change. Self-respect is quiet but firm, and when it takes root, it does not ask for permission. It simply draws a line and stands by it. Being done is the point where you choose dignity over attachment. For a long time, self-respect is tested through tolerance. You tolerate excuses. You tolerate inconsistency. You tolerate being misunderstood because you believe patience will fix what accountability never addressed. But eventually, respect demands honesty. It asks you to acknowledge when something is costing you more than it gives. Being done is not about anger toward others. It is about loyalty to yourself. Self-respect means you stop returning to places where your presence is taken for granted. You no longer shrink your needs to keep the peace or silence your voice to avoid conflict. Ironically, this form of self-respect often looks like silence on the outside, not because you have nothing to say, but because you refuse to say it where it will not be honored. Silence becomes the shield that protects your values. Being done also means releasing the need for validation. You accept that some people will never see your effort, your intentions, or your growth. And that's okay. Self-respect does not require agreement from others. It requires alignment within yourself. Once you are aligned, external opinions lose their power over your choices. There is a calm that comes with being done. Not relief born of escape, but peace born of certainty. You stop replaying conversations in your head. You stop wondering if you should have said more or done less. You know you gave what you could, and now you are choosing what you deserve. That certainty is grounding. In the end, being done is not closing your heart. It is protecting it. It is choosing to invest your energy where it is valued and your presence where it is respected. Self-respect doesn't shout its arrival. It arrives quietly through boundaries, through distance, and through the unwavering decision to never abandon yourself again. And this is the truth most people don't prepare you for. When you're finally done, the world doesn't explode. There is no dramatic collapse. No instant justice, no applause for choosing yourself. Life simply gets quieter, but in that quiet, you begin to hear something you've been missing, your own voice. Silence becomes your strength because it is no longer empty. It carries everything you learned, everything you endured, and everything you refuse to lose about yourself. You stop reaching back. You stop looking over your shoulder. You move forward with calm certainty, not to prove a point, but to protect your peace. So let the silence speak. Let it echo where your words were ignored. Let it stand where your effort was overlooked. Because when you're truly done, you don't need closure, explanations, or permission. Your silence will be the loudest statement you ever make.